Former President Trump hit the campaign trail today, visiting New Hampshire and South Carolina as he tries to kickstart his third bid for the presidency.
On the campaign trail in 2024, Donald Trump promised he would restore free speech once he came back into office. No more government censorship, no more pressure campaigns, no more speech police. And for a lot of people, that message landed.
Christmas has come early, folks.
Look at this, ladies and gentlemen.
During his 2025 inaugural address, Trump stated plainly,
I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
Later that day, Trump signed Executive Order 14149.
Ordering the restoration of freedom of speech and preventing government censorship of free speech going forward.
And with his signature, finally, free speech was restored across America. Or was it? Now halfway through President Trump's second term, we're sitting down with the advocates and experts that lead the fight for free speech across the country to ask one simple question. Do you think he kept his promise? Or has the Trump administration done something else entirely? This is 1AX, Trump 2.0.
I remember that first executive order coming out so clearly. It was one of the first times that we had a real existential conversation as a staff about how do we react to this? Do we respond to something at face value, right? Just the text of what it says, or how much do we bring in the context of reality, right? And how this person has demonstrated those values in the past.
You know, one thing the First Amendment stands for is the idea that the people should be able to talk freely amongst themselves and decide for themselves what appropriate subjects of the conversation are, and not be told by the government what they should be talking about.
Free speech is often a rallying cry for the people who feel that they're a minority at any given point in time. Their views are the minority, or they're not accepted by the government or powerful institutions in society.
I support Donald Trump because I am tired of being a second-class citizen in my own country.
He was a big fan of calling the media enemies of the state.
I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
He praised members of his cabinet for attacking individual reports.
But I think in the toxic environment that you've created here in CNN and cable news, which is a real crisis of legitimacy for your network,
walking away from interviews when they didn't like the question.
I think we have enough of an interview here, Hope. Okay, that's enough. Let's go.
And there were other cracks in the firmament of free speech in the first Trump administration, where I think you're looking at this on day one, and you have to say, are we judging it by his text? Are we judging it in part by the man? And I think I did a little of both, right? It looks good on paper, but let's see how it gets fleshed out.
In a democratic society, we need a free and independent press. There is no way to have democracy function, practically speaking, if the president or any government official can choose who covers them and how they cover them.
The AP says the White House demanded that the AP follow the name change. When it did not, an AP reporter was barred from an Oval Office event.
This is clearly retribution for a constitutionally protected decision. The AP is a news organization. They have a right to decide what term they use to describe this body of water. So that was a decision protected by the First Amendment, and then you had the nation's highest official punishing them for that decision.
The vast majority of the country's major news organizations are banding together and refusing to sign a Defense Department document about new press rules.
As a symbol of this moment of how much of a sea change the Trump administration was, it really summed it all up, where you have the established traditional media packing up, walking out, and, you know, right-wing influencers and online Trump fans coming in and replacing them.
This is actually one of the craziest experiences of my life as a journalist.
What they were doing was trying to make sure that they were the only story being told, that the official narrative came out of the White House and the Pentagon, and never a discouraging word was otherwise heard. That's not the news, that's propaganda.
If you as a reporter are publishing only what the government tells you you're authorized to release, I think it's fair to say you're not doing your job. It is a job of reporters to question the official narrative, to figure out what is really going on.
It feels like it would be not only reasonable, but the duty of government to sit there and go, hey, there are things that we are not going to allow you to publish because it's going to put American servicemen and women at risk. Why is that unreasonable?
The history of the First Amendment rejects the idea that the government gets to decide what the press publishes in advance. Does that mean that the military will at times think that the press is hurting the war effort? Absolutely. But that means that reporters are going to have to try to figure out in good faith where the lines are between responsible journalism and the dangerous publication of facts.
Donald Trump is suing the US news network CBS for $10 billion, alleging that an interview it featured with Kamala Harris on the 60 Minutes show was misleading.
No one wants to be perceived as a censor, period. There's no point at which being a censor is popular. So in every act of censorship, there's always a rhetorical attempt to redefine the speech you dislike as something that's something other than free speech.
What you should be concerned about is a president who's going to pull on any lever available to him, even some levers that aren't available to him by law, to punish his political enemies.
When you have someone who is the president taking individual action, and at the same time you have institutions or entities like the FCC threatening regulatory action.
They'll take a great story and they'll make it bad. I think that's really illegal, personally.
Disney ABC suspending late-night host Jimmy Kimmel, quote, indefinitely.
President Trump announcing he is suing another media outlet.
There's a connection there. And the connection is an attempt to intimidate media organizations, make them think twice before they report on things that might make the government unhappy.
Paramount has agreed to pay President Trump $16 million.
And then at the same time, you see that the FCC was threatening regulatory action against CBS.
I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
What he said there is dangerous as hell.
It's understandable that media organizations might say, even though these are weak lawsuits and we'd win on the merits, most likely, what if we don't capitulate?
Under the agreement, the $16 million will go to Trump's future presidential library.
They are sending a signal to smaller media outlets or individuals who may be reporting or filing public records requests or speaking up online that the president can police your speech, and if he doesn't agree with your political opinion or take on it, he can bankrupt you or shut you down. And CBS made that threat real.
The Trump administration making good on its threat to cancel $400 million in federal grants to Columbia University.
This stems from the university's handling of pro-Palestinian protests.
We are here today to demand that Columbia divest immediately from all stakes in Israeli apartheid.
What we had here was a president saying, your universities have allowed anti-Semitic conduct and harassment to flourish on campus, and as a result, we're cutting off your funding.
Harvard is suing the Trump administration after the White House threatened to freeze more than $2 billion in grants and contracts.
Harvard's got to behave themselves. Harvard is treating our country with great disrespect.
Second rationale was, you're hotbeds of anti-Americanism. Okay, now the mask has slipped a little bit.
If you're selectively targeting particular institutions because they had a political tilt that the current president disagrees with, then you're in a First Amendment problem.
It very quickly became clear that this wasn't about fighting anti-Semitism per se, it was about punishing perceived political enemies.
You want campuses free to decide what their own ecosystem of free speech is going to be. We don't want the government to be the ones deciding those questions.
Columbia University has agreed to comply with the Trump administration's demands for change under threats of pulling $400 million in funding.
Why would it make any sense for someone to be against the federal government not giving a bunch of money to a bunch of people who are clearly against the federal government? That what they wanted to do was create a space that was equal. They wanted to create a space that was representative of the American people. And that if Columbia and Harvard don't want to do that, that's fine, but they're not going to get money from the American people. Why is that not a fair argument?
There has been a growing focus on the things people have said largely online about Charlie Kirk's death.
The government has made a concerted effort to attack the right to record and report on law enforcement operations in public.
Rising tensions in Minneapolis tonight, 3,000 federal agents now in Minnesota.
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist.
It freaks me the fuck out. Let me just be clear on the record. It freaks me the fuck out.